All week long, I've been talking about how much has changed since Donald Trump's first term. And it has. Think about the tone and tenor of the country. Think about the way that these corporate CEOs stood behind him at an inauguration. Last time they hosted crying rooms for their employees.
What did the bad man do? Calm down.
Trump's being celebrated in a way that he wasn't 8 years ago. But one thing hasn't changed: how the media is covering Donald Trump. The hypocrisy is unreal. For years, they whined and complained about access to Joe Biden. They cloak themselves in the First Amendment, talk about press access, the First Amendment, freedom of the press, access and transparency to our leaders. So on day one, when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States and is making several consequential decisions, he invites the press in to tell them what he's doing, which is basically, I want to tell the American people and use them as a vehicle, but then also allow them to question him on anything, on anything. What did they do with that opportunity? The folks at News Nation covered it so viewers could see that. The folks at Fox did that. The folks at C-SPAN did that. But when Jake Tapper's CNN had an opportunity, they didn't show it. They didn't want their viewers to see that. Neither did Nicole Wallace at MSNBC. What are they afraid of? Because I don't actually buy the First Amendment argument. Like, they just don't want you to hear from Donald Trump. They don't want you to know that there's an alternative or the reason that he's actually getting things done. Is 4 o'clock news that valuable? Really? Whatever time it is in the afternoon? This isn't like prime time, folks, where there's real ad dollars at stake. CNN and MSNBC should actually welcome the opportunity to show their viewers something. In fact, if they really hate him that much, it makes sense to show them that, because then they can tell their viewers with their big panel of Trump haters why it was so wrong. But they don't even want you to know it exists. Later in the week, we saw that woke bishop lecture Donald Trump at the National Cathedral. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Let's take a look.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives.
Hold on. Stop. Who are these children that she somehow knows that are scared? Why are they scared? I mean, Donald Trump's probably the most friendly gay Republican to ever hold the office of president of the United States. Rick Grinnell in his first term was the first member of a cabinet to be openly gay, ever. Scott Bessent, his Secretary Treasury designate right now, is openly gay. He will be the highest ranking cabinet official ever. Donald Trump doesn't do a real good job of being homophobic, does he? What are they scared of? What's this boogeyman that she's alluding to? Because she doesn't explain it. And apparently she must know everybody, because all of these children that she knows in Republican households or whatever are scared. Anyway, and remember, by the way, this is at the National Cathedral. This is supposed to be a prayer service for us, for our country, to pray for the new president. Anyway, keep going.
And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques.
Okay. All right. Stop. This is ridiculous. We're all immigrants. If you're not a Native American, then you're an immigrant. By the way, the woman sitting to Donald Trump's left, Melania Trump, she's a recent immigrant. I don't think he has anything against immigrants. I think a lot of us, myself included, have a problem with people who are illegal immigrants who commit a crime, even worse. But she's gaslighting us. And the reason I bring this up is that no one in the media pointed any of this out. They allowed her to get away with this. They celebrated her. They invited her on The View. They invited her on CNN. Did any of them say, hey, wait a second, you said that Donald Trump is anti-immigrant? He's not. He's never said anything of the sort. In fact, he's married to a recent immigrant. No, they didn't, because that's not what they wanted. They wanted to celebrate her. They wanted to act like this was actually a cool thing to do. I mean, it's unbelievable that this happened, but it's also unbelievable that it didn't get called out, because in any other normal circumstance, the press would have gone after that person and said that was not the time or the place. And by the way, it wasn't true. She is spreading misinformation, and the likes of CNN and MSNBC should actually cover it. All right. I can't believe that. But it gets worse. Marco Rubio was confirmed as the Secretary of State. The leftists should be excited because he's the first Hispanic Secretary of State ever. He was voted out of the United States Senate 99-0. By the way, what does that say about Marco Rubio's qualifications? And yet, network after network asked him the same exact question. What is that question, you ask? What is it that you're going to ask the first person confirmed in Trump's cabinet? What are you going to ask the Secretary of State who is going to give you 5 or 10 minutes? Are you going to ask him about Ukraine and Russia, North Korea, Iran, China, and the threats that we face there? I mean, gosh, that's just the tip of the iceberg. No, you're going to ask him about January 6th. Take a look.
Let's start really want to start with those January 6 pardons, because many people believe, including the American people, were not in favor of these blanket pardons. You know, Team Trump had been saying it was going to be taken on a case-by-case basis. That did not appear to be the case. It appears blanket pardons. What message do you think that sends to people around the world about what we stand for?
Let's begin with January 6 pardons. Back when this happened, you called it a national embarrassment, saying we now have third world countries that are lecturing us and we have tin pot dictators that are mocking us. Of course, you're now America's top diplomat. You'll be speaking with your counterparts around the world. What message does that pardon send to them?
Mr. Secretary, what message does pardoning nearly all of them send to the rest of the world?
Now, here's why I want you to take away from this. Craig Melvin was first among the shows. So if you are CBS or ABC, I would look at that clip and say, wow, he was asked on NBC about January 6th. He's not going to answer it. He's going to move on. So we shouldn't waste time. Let's get to something else where we could make news. But they couldn't do that. They couldn't, because George Stephanopoulos and Gayle King have to ask about January 6th. Because that's the issue that their audience cares about, and that's what they want you to know. They don't care about anything to do with Russia and Ukraine, the hostages that are being held by Hamas. They could have asked anything that they wanted. It doesn't make any sense to ask the Secretary of State that question. They did it because they have an agenda. That's what they want you to know. And then they won't even let this issue of Elon Musk making a hand gesture and somehow, oh, I know what it is. He's got to be a Nazi. But here's the kicker. When signs of every other Democrat was seen using the same hand gesture, well, we can't ask about that. We can't, because that doesn't make sense. We got to stick around this. I thought they would have learned their lesson. They didn't. Look at my buddy Jim Acosta over on CNN. This is, the indignant, almighty Jim Acosta. This is CNN. We're about the truth. Take a listen.
This is not Fox, Congressman. You can't just spin a tail and pull the wool over people's eyes. Yeah. This is CNN. This is the news. We are asking you to come on and tell the truth. It's an alarming choice for a man who has often struggled to unequivocally denounce white supremacists. You recall these moments.
but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Those words have power. They have meaning. And when Donald Trump speaks, the world listens. Neo-Nazis and white supremacists certainly listen. So why can't he denounce them? Why can't he reject their support?
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
What's your response to Donald Trump saying she should be fired, that Liz Cheney should be fired upon? He keeps speaking in these very extreme terms about the potential dangers to the country if he doesn't win in November. He's used words like bloodbath.
That's right, Jim. Yeah. You want to talk about truth, not spreading misinformation, et cetera, et cetera. Look in the mirror, bro. You're the biggest offender. This is pretty unreal, getting lectured by the likes of CNN. Now, a little dirty secret here. CNN's in big trouble. They just lost a $5 million defamation suit against a Navy veteran. Jake Tapper cost them that. He had to testify in that lawsuit, and they lost. Uh-oh. There's cuts all over CNN. All over CNN. They are slashing and slashing and slashing. See, 8 years ago when Donald Trump came into office, ratings went through the roof. CNN's ratings, MSNBC's ratings, subscription to the Washington Post, subscriptions to the New York Times, they went through the roof. It actually made financial sense to be the resistance. But look what's happening now, Jimmy. Your network is in free fall. You are cutting because no one's watching. Same thing at MSNBC. They're spinning it off. And then you look at something like the Washington Post. They got something like 25 million page views 8 years ago. They're down to like 2.5 million. They're crashing, folks. It is unbelievable. On the eve of Donald Trump's inauguration, by the way, the head of CNN, a guy named Mark Thompson, held a meeting with all of these folks, their anchors, their correspondents, and their producers, to get ready for the inauguration and their coverage. And in the meeting, Thompson talks about how he wanted open-minded coverage of president and to talk about the future, not relitigating the past. Did they not hear their own boss? It's like they said, we don't care. We still have to fight the battle. It is unbelievable. We voted for change in November and we got it. And we can see it every day right now. The problem is we're also voting with our time and what we watch and what we read. And it's making a difference. CNN, the Washington Post, the New York Times, MSNBC are going down. You know, a couple months ago, I did an event and I was asked about the state of journalism, whether I was concerned that it was in decline. And I said, it's not in decline. The legacy media is, the left-wing legacy folks, they're in decline. They're losing subscriptions because they don't produce a good product. No one believes them. No one trusts them. But journalism is flourishing. Independent media, Substack, all of this stuff is flourishing because people have a choice now that they didn't used to have. You only used to be able to get the newspaper or watch one of 3 channels at TV at 6 o'clock to get your news. Now you can watch shows like this. You can sign up for newsletters like mine and others. You can watch a whole ton of programs. The problem is they've lost their monopoly and it's showing. Choices matter. Let's make some more together about what we watch and read.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.